I had worked in the World Trade Center for a total of 16 years, but on September 11th, I was across the street. I'd been assigned to a building, probably 75 yards south of the building. Got in a little bit earlier than I normally would have. I was there probably about 8:15. Walked out of the Trade Center, walked by, got coffee at a cart where I visited fairly much daily, went into the building, and then went up to the 5th floor. I was sitting at my desk and just getting ready for the morning, and then I heard a noise that sounded off in the distance, and then it became a roar, and then just a tremendous explosion sounded. And the building I was in shook, and so I immediately leaped up and wondered what was that. I ran down to what was then my boss's office and had a perspective of looking up at the first tower that had been hit. And when I saw the building, what first struck me was the fact that there was a large hole and then little stubby wings. So it appeared as though it had been a missile or an airplane that had gone through the building, and about 3 or 4 floors were on fire, and could see all the cars were on fire. The jet fuel had ignited and just basically obliterated everything there. And I started to see a few people walking out into that parking lot. So I went back to my office and I called Helene to let her know that I was okay. Took another sip of coffee, and then Dave Wollman called me. Put down the phone, took another sip of coffee, and then started to hear yet another sound very similar to the first sound that I had heard. And I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like something else is about to occur. And as it grew louder and louder, that plane flew directly over our building and then hit the Trade Center, the other Trade Center. And by that time, I was just awestruck and just stunned. I didn't know what to do. I just realized I had to get out of that area because there was something unusual going on, that the World Trade Center for some reason was being targeted. So I immediately just got up from my desk, grabbed my briefcase with my car keys, ran downstairs, and then we gathered in the lobby, and they said, well, our building's on fire, so we need to evacuate. And in the process, I did see some bodies that had been covered by the police with sheets. Those, unfortunately, were the cars that had been devastated by the debris from the first plane. And as I walked past and walked down the street, I saw parts from the airplane, and then did see the tire, the wheel that had flown over our building. Most everybody by that time was also watching the fire. And I then realized maybe I better get out faster, or sooner rather than later, just to get away from the area. So I immediately headed down to the subway. We then headed down to Trenton, got my car, and then drove back to the house and walked into the kitchen. And by that time, people started telephoning to find out what was going on. Meanwhile, Helene at this time only knew that I had survived the first one, wasn't sure what had happened after the second one hit. So she got the kids from out of then elementary school and drove them home. And when the garage door went up and she saw my car, she immediately thought that I had been killed and that someone drove my car home. So we had quite a reunion in the kitchen when they realized that everything was okay. I did have an opportunity in thinking about all of the events that took place later on. I thought about the people that I came into contact with and that I never really knew what happened to them. The fellow who sold coffee at the cart that I bought from that day, who was unfortunately in that debris field that burned. So there were a lot of events that took place over which I seemed to have no control that day. And I was thankful for later on having a chance to go to St. Paul's and to go there and to help out with Patty and some of the other folks that were there from our church. Because there I did have control, and I was able to reach out and have some healing available through helping the firemen and the policemen that were there. That was my first time back to the Trade Center. And it was a positive, and it was a good way to start that process of healing and thinking about things that happened. I mean, so many terrible things, but ending on a better note, remembering all the people that were involved trying to help out that day and feeling like I could do something to help out too.